So if you like think of OpenClaw as like a story, and it is a story, that's why it went so viral. It's like the story of like what one individual can do with the help of vibe coding. The one guy, it was basically, and then eventually he got far enough where a big voluntary open source community arose around it. And so it's very inspiring to see what one person can do. And to me, OpenClaw is more of like an idea than an actual product. It shows us the idea of what if an agent has its own computer and you can talk to it however you want. And you're going to see this big renaissance of stuff that can't be controlled, that is customized to what the user wants.
Guys, it feels like the world is moving at 10x the speed and pace that it was just a couple months ago. I don't know if you guys are feeling the same way, but things are accelerating. Oh my God.
I listened to the show with Pablo and he said it's compressing time. And I'm like, that's just how it feels.
Yeah. By the way, if a person's listening to this podcast and you haven't listened to the show that was basically 2 earlier, where we were talking about the Claw bot, or it's called OpenClaw now with the branding, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to that conversation as well, because it's going to be pertinent to some of the stuff we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I just spent 3 days with Pablo. So, you know, I applaud you for bringing him on, and I'll be sharing some of his insights as well from the work we just did together over the last few days.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Justin, where do we even start this conversation? Because what I kind of feel like was the conversation I had with Trey and Pablo was so, like, we were already going 100 mile an hour with the conversation. And for the listener that was listening to it, I think their takeaway might have been, oh my God, what is happening? I don't even know what they're talking about right now. So like maybe we throttle things back and like slowly bring everything up to speed. So take it away.
I agree. It was a great episode and I really enjoyed it. I could almost keep up. I could keep up with it only because I know them and I really know Pablo well. But I feel like for the drive-by listener, it was like trying to get on a fully moving train, like one of those Japanese trains. It's like, it's asking a lot. So I want to help kind of explain at least how I understand like what's going on, like what the hell's happening. And if you understand ClawBot or OpenClaw, I think it's the thing in the news right now. If you understand that, you kind of understand what's going on. And I was thinking about how to understand it, like break it down into basics. And I realized you had to introduce a lot of foundational ideas first that most people don't quite get, and it impairs their ability to understand what's going on. So I'm going to try to introduce like maybe 10 ideas. I have a bunch of notes here. I think you have to understand in order to really understand what's going on. But I'm not going to use any jargon. I'm going to try to simplify it and make it understandable for people who don't know anything in this. Okay, so that's my goal. It's a bit of a high wire act, so it might not go well, but we'll see.
Look, real fast, before you kick that off, would you say from a really, really like zoomed out from space kind of view, that what all the excitement is about right now is everybody's accustomed to using cloud-based large language model AI. They type into a chat and they get an answer back. But now you're at this pivotal point where the tech is so advanced that now people can run it locally in a way that's actually going to be quite useful.
Yeah.
And we haven't had the hardware and we haven't had the software models to do that yet.
Yeah.
That's really kind of like this clear break of what we're experiencing is now people can run it locally without even tapping into a cloud-based provider.
The significance from OpenClaw to me is it's a big step towards like self-sovereign, user-controlled AI. It's not a full step all the way there, but it's a big step in that direction. And it's a step in that direction from a couple different angles. And so I want to try to tease that out for people. And I need to introduce some basic ideas just to make it make sense. Because there's a few things that you can understand why the importance of, like we've talked a lot with HRF about the importance of vibe coding. And so I'm going to that's going to be one of the takeaways here is like vibe coding enabled this. And it's going to enable a heck of a lot more over time. So like just zooming out, like what is an LLM, right? Like that, we got to start from the very basics. So like what is an LLM? To me, it's like a new way of using computers, right? So like traditionally a computer, we use like computer programs, right? Like desktop apps and stuff like that. A computer program is something where it's like a recipe. It's a recipe for a computer. So it's something that's typed out with exact instructions by a human, and it tells the computer exact steps to follow to do something. So anything that can be broken down into steps can be like represented in a traditional computer program, like arithmetic. Traditional computers are very good at arithmetic. They're very bad at telling jokes because you can't encode the steps of a good joke. Like it's almost a sense what makes it funny is because it's unexpected, right? Zoom out, one way to think of an LLM, it's like a new type of computer program that's like bad at everything traditional computer programs were good at, like arithmetic, but good at all the things they were bad at, like creating art or telling a story or coding. So that's kind of like the high level thing. Is I want to frame this as, in a sense, OpenClaw is a new type of computer. To me, that's what it is. It's a new way of using computers. It's a new type of computer program. And so, like, I'm assuming you've all used an LLM, but have no idea how they work. So there's kind of 3 steps in an LLM. The first is it's called pre-training. So what it does is it downloads all the text on the internet and compresses it into a single file. That's the fundamental thing of what an LLM is. You take all the information on the internet, you try to lose the least important parts of it, and only keep the most important kind of ideas and principles and facts and knowledge. What you get at the end is a file that can, given like half of an internet document, it can complete it. It can like do a best effort job of like getting half of a Wikipedia article and writing the second half. That's all it can do, which is it has a lot of intelligence, but it's not actually useful, because like when does a normal person need to complete an internet document, right? And so if that file, it's a file. That's what a model is. If you heard a model, that's what a model is. It's a file, right? If you've heard of weights, weights are what's in the file. That's what weights are in AI. And an open model versus a closed model, an open model is if you can download that file, like DeepSeek or Kimi. Generally, many of them are Chinese. And then the American ones are closed generally. You can't download the file. So it's generally the closed ones are a little smarter, and the open ones are a little more self-sovereign. But the closed ones are generally American. The open ones are oftentimes Chinese. But it's starting to get mixed up. And
let's pull on that thread.
Yeah.
Because I think somebody who's hearing that, it makes no sense to them
Yeah.
as to why the Chinese are the ones release. I have an opinion on this. I'm very curious to hear your opinion, though. Why are they the ones releasing these open models, but in the US, where you would think that would be taking place, you're not seeing anything of the sort? Why is that the case?
To me, I think the biggest part is like the capital structure of the companies doing it, right? So like OpenAI and Anthropic have like these huge capital structures, and they need to make a lot of money fast, and they're on the frontier, and they need barriers to prevent competitors, right? And so not releasing the model weights is the biggest thing, just from a business point of view, no kind of extra thinking. I think that makes sense. I mean, another thing is like, I bet the CCP likes that there are these open models out there that get embedded into like Airbnb. Airbnb's come out and said, hey, we use these Quen for all kinds of stuff. It's great, right? So it's a way for like the CCP basically to embed Chinese values in American tech software. And also, you know, America is like the leading one. And then it's kind of easier. I mean, the Chinese economy is the last 10, 20 years has done a lot of imitating. They're amazing at imitating, right? So that's kind of another thing, is it's kind of something that they're already very good at, is reverse engineering. Those are 3 things I would, Alex, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I just would say that at the moment they judged that they could not compete on the proprietary side, and they could both introduce maybe some chaos and opportunities for themselves by going this route. However, going that route, it's kind of like a Sputnik thing, as we know. It has opened a whole new door, and actually, I think, been good for the world at large that you have other geopolitical powers pushing open source options, because then it's going to eventually force the American companies to do the same. So you're going to have pressure, just like you had pressure to add encryption to devices and to apps, after the Snowden files. Like over time, there's going to be pressure on American companies, despite profits. Like they're going to feel pressured to have open arrangements and open products.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this at the end of the recording, I think, but hopefully also privacy protecting ones too. But yeah, that would be my take.
One small note I want to recap from a talk that was given at our yearly AI summit in San Francisco was this guy, Ramez. I mentioned how like a year ago, we thought there would be a takeoff runaway leader in AI. And that didn't happen. They're all getting closer and closer. It's getting more and more competitive. And the closed models and the open models are starting to get competitive. There was a bigger gap there ago, and now it's getting very competitive. So this is like great for user sovereignty. We're not, you know, it's trending in a way that you don't have like a single overlord, and it's a very competitive dynamic, which I think is great for freedom.
One of the things that I think also makes it more competitive is when you start running these models that are not on the forefront of being the best from a intelligence standpoint, but you combine these lesser models with persistent memory, run locally, the performance that you get for what it is that you need is actually a lot better than a premier model. Because it's continuing to learn, and it's not forgetting all those past interactions like you get with a frontier model that has a new context window every single time that you open up with very limited memory. So that persistent memory is one of the things that I think is massive for self-sovereignty, and from getting away from these large language models that are just sucking all of the data and using that potentially against you. you're going to get better local performance. The thing that I was, on that original question, it seems like, and I've asked the AI this particular question, why we're seeing the open source models coming out of places that we would least expect it. And it gave me a really surprising answer in that they're looking at the game theory and where this is all going. And what they're trying to do is just ever so slightly steering the results of what you get out of the model. For, like, let's just take an example, Tiananmen Square. If you're training the model, you can either have that as part of the initial data input before it compresses everything into the model and it adjusts the weights ever so slightly. And if those are the models that everybody starts to build on and run locally, you get somewhat slightly different results than if you have somebody who's feeding it with the base, everything that's ever been written on the internet, minus these things that we really don't want in there when we compress the model. They're removed. And so I found that to be really interesting and, really a lot of foresight. If true, there's a lot of foresight in there to make sure that you get your model out there. Now, at the end of the day, I can run that model locally. I can ask it a question that maybe isn't in its weights. I can say, go out there and research. That's just wrong. That's not truth. Go out there and research on the internet, like more facts on, and using the Tiananmen Square as an example.
Right.
On this. And then my local model now knows it, and it's not like it's part of its weights anymore because I've steered it in a different direction. So in the end, it doesn't matter. But
I want to make one, before moving on, I want to make one point here. So we did a hackathon recently where we put together activists from HRF with freedom tech developers from my Bitcoin meetup in Austin, basically. And one of the interesting projects was an actual Tiananmen Square student organizer, Jen Lee, I forget his last name.
Dr. Yang Jen Lee.
Yeah, Dr. Yang Jen Lee. They did a project where they basically made a benchmark for all the different LLMs, comparing their questions on human rights questions like Tiananmen Square, right? Which is very interesting. And we look forward to that getting published. Let me move on because I have a lot here. So I'm trying to where an LLM comes from and how it's used, right? So I talk about pre-training. You take the internet and you get it onto a file. Then there's a thing called post-training, which turns it into a useful assistant. It gives it a bunch of examples, here's how to be useful to a person. Here's how to do a coding agent, right? And so now you have something that goes from be able to complete a document to be able to answer questions, be your therapist, write some code, right? And so that's how the model happens. That's it. So then the question is, how do you use it, right? And the word for that is inference. You probably heard that word. It took me a while to remember that that's what it means. Inference means just when the model is run, right? And so this is something that you can hire someone to do in the cloud for you, like ChatGPT or Anthropic, or you can do it on your own computer if you have a computer. So you can use something called Olama, right? And so what inference is you run that model basically, and you can put text in and you get text out, right? So it's just like the ChatGPT interface. That's what's happening behind the scenes, text in, text out. And the one problem with open models is you need about a $20,000 computer in order to run them, right? So that's one of the tough things right now. That's a big technical barrier to real individual user sovereignty in AI, and it's something we're all kind of working on. That's what inference is. Okay, so now I want to talk about another word that's very, very important. This is maybe the most important one, called context. You've probably heard this word, context.
Justin, I'm sorry to slow you down. I just want, so people heard on the episode with Trey and Pablo that Trey was running his off of a Raspberry Pi. And so they're like, well, hold on, you just told me it costs $20,000 to run it locally. And I just want to explain to the listener. So the way Trey's OpenClaw works on his Raspberry Pi, which is, $300-400, is he's making API calls to Claude or to, OpenAI to do the inference on their cloud, and then it's giving it all back, right?
So he has an agent, which we'll get to. He has an agent running on a Raspberry Pi. But the inference, the thing that's actually doing the smart AI stuff, is in a cloud somewhere. So there is a step towards user sovereignty, because what ChatGPT was trying to get us to do a year ago is run the agent in the cloud too. So this is halfway there. So it's huge step forward, right? Running the agent locally, it can save memories locally, and you have the option for certain things to use a local model too. So it's a great kind of a half step forward. I mean, it's 10 steps forward, but it's not all the way to the goal.
It's a huge win for open source, and it changed the game. So let's go.
Okay,
Indeed.
So we define the word inference. That's one kind of word you need to do. And context is maybe the most important one. So context is, it took me a while to, I'm very technical. It took me a while to actually understand what the heck people were saying. It probably took 6 months to actually understand it. And the key thing to understand is that LLMs are something we call stateless. Every time you interact with an LLM, it's starting from scratch. We talked about memory earlier. On a deep technical level, there is no memory at all. Every time you interact with it, you start from scratch. All it remembers is the training and the pre-training. That's it. Okay, so if me and Preston use ChatGPT 5.2, we are getting exactly the same model, right? If there are some memories that are specific to Preston, they come from elsewhere. They don't actually come from the model. We get the exact same thing. So that's an important thing to understand. And
so Justin, would it be safe to say that this context, so you and I use the same model, but the header that's put into the start of that chat is what's different? And
exactly.
So if you have like past memory, like Preston likes short answers, he doesn't like a long answer. That little snippet or that header is inserted and you don't see it getting inserted into the context window, but it's inserted in there.
Yeah.
And so that's how we might get a different answer from our from its past memory of us, and how we use it is that header that it's seeded with before you enter the context window.
Exactly. So like if me and Preston have the same model and we're getting different answers, I mean, you can see this with yourself, right? Like let's say you use ChatGPT. If you're in a long conversation, it will remember things previous in the conversation, but it usually won't remember things from different conversations, but every once in a while it will, right? So that's like a big question. Well, if LLMs are stateless, how are these two things that we've all observed true, right? And so the answer is that every round of conversation, let's say you open a ChatGPT tab and you make 10 answers, you go through 10 back and forths, right? On the 11th one, it doesn't just send the question you asked or the thing you said the 11th time. It sends that, it sends the 10th, the response, the 9th, it sends the entire history every single time. And there's also one extra one that you don't see, which is called the system prompt. This is what the header that Preston was talking about. This is like, think of it as like the 10 commandments. This is something that God, like the developer, basically, ChatGPT, or sometimes the user themselves gets to put in there. And it's instructions for how the model should behave, which the model doesn't always follow, it tries to. And it's also important that it be the 10 commandments and not like the 10,000 commandments, right? So like what we were doing with AI a year ago is we were doing the 10,000 commandments. We'd write like a whole essay on the beginning and we'd basically overload the model and it couldn't do things. And so a lot of the development over the last year that has enabled OpenClaw and things like it is that we figured out a way to only give it 10 commandments and basically derive the extra things and do like just-in-time learning to figure out the other things without overloading it right as a start. So what context means is it's the conversation. The entire conversation, everything you've gone in that session is what context means. It's everything that has been said previously, including the magic system prompt at the top.
I want to pause here and really foot stomp why this is such a big deal. So you're about to see commercials coming out at the Super Bowl from Claude, basically banging OpenAI over the head because they recently said that they're going to start doing advertisements in their service. Think about, let's just like really pull on this thread and go deeper. If you're OpenAI and you have an advertiser that's doing really well with you because they've got a high margin product and you're able to convert on that, OpenAI could potentially, and I'm not saying they're gonna do this, but there's an incentive for them to do this where they start blindly inserting in the header things that could potentially steer the user to wanting said product that's being advertised.
Yeah.
And you would have no idea that that's in the header.
Yeah.
And this just goes to the whole point of like why we're having this conversation, which is local AI is going to be very important for you to see the world clearly because you won't know that you're being very indirectly, subliminally steered in a certain direction because you have no idea what's going into that header.
Yeah. Like the AI experience will get steered by something. Do you want it to be an advertiser? Do you want it to be a big tech company? Do you want it to be another government? Or do you want it to be you, right? Like we want it to be you. And that's what Claude is a step in the direction of.
Alex, do you have anything to add on that particular point? Because I mean, this is really why you're so passionate about running local AI, right?
Well, let's let Justin finish the context. No pun intended.
Yeah.
And then I have my piece, and I think it'll help pull things together.
Yeah. So we think about it from like a Bitcoin point of view. Like the Bitcoiners, we understand scarcity. That's like one mental model that the Bitcoiners really get. You apply that to AI. It's like, what's scarce, right? In the training, it's like you need data, you need energy, you need computers, right? In inference, when you actually run it, it's context. Context is a scarce thing. That conversation, the longer it gets, the more confused the AI will get. And at a certain point, you run out of context and you just have to start over. And that's called compaction. And it makes everything worse, right? So that's the big engineering battle. And it's traditional engineering. It has nothing to do with AI, really. Traditional software engineering, the last year, we've all been trying to figure out how to get better at managing this. And that is what has led to good AI agents now that we didn't have a year ago. It's a big part of it, right? The models got smarter, but the context engineering also got way smarter. So I wanted to discuss next what an agent is, right? An agent is like, so now we're getting close to OpenClaw. OpenClaw is an agent, right? So an agent to me is like a marriage between these new and old computer programs, right? The old stuff is like, how you control your desktop computer or how you run a browser, stuff like that. And the new one is an LLM, which can generate text that's like really smart and in some sense has all the intelligence of the internet baked in, right? How is it a marriage between these new and old things? An agent is the thing that makes requests to an LLM. So like the ChatGPT website in this definition would be an agent. Claude Code, which is like a desktop or terminal program you can run that will write code for you, or Replit, those are agents, right? So it's something that makes a bunch of requests to some AI and also has the ability to use what we call tools. A tool is like you can do something. All an LLM can do is spit out text. It can't do anything in the world. So the question was, how do you make something that can only spit out text control a browser or do a web search, right? How can it do a web search? And so what we did is we invented this idea called a tool. What a tool is you put in the system prompt, there's a special marker that means I want you to search this on the web, right? So think of this. It's like a sentence that says, search this in capitals. And then there's like a question, and then it ends, search this in capitals as well. If the LLM sends that back, search this, question, search this, the agent will say, ooh, I know that. That's a marker, a special marker. I got to do something special with that. I'm not going to show that to user. I'm going to go fire up Google and do a web search, and then I'm going to send it back to the LLM. So this is what an agent does. In the system prompt, you teach it tools that the agent software itself will intercept and do special things like search the web, control a browser, send a message on Telegram, and all the other things that OpenClaw does. That's called a tool. And so once we had that, you had, this is the way of augmenting an LLM to be able to do stuff in the real world. So you maybe heard of MCP. MCP was something like a year ago that blew up because it was a way to publish a bunch of these tools and share them. So that basically like, in the beginning, ChatGPT tried to dictate what tools you could use, right? They said, now we have our tool and you can only use this one, right? And everyone's like, screw that. We want to do any one we want. And so MCP was invented as a way to share tools. And so the user can choose which one they want. And the problem with it was like, if you ever heard of like just-in-case learning versus just-in-time learning, like just-in-case learning is like getting a college degree to solve a problem. Just-in-time learning is like you have a problem and then you go to YouTube and learn how to solve that problem and you solve it, right? And so like a year ago, we were doing just-in-case prompting with MCP. We'd say, here's how to do 10,000 commandments just in case you need them. And then the first round of conversation, the AI is already kind of confused because you just told it way too much, right? And so now a thing called skills, which I'll talk about next, is more like just in case prompting. You say, here's a bunch of manuals you can use if you need them. They're over on that shelf over there. Don't read them yet, but you can see the titles and when you should use them on the bindings, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the difference between MCP. That was like just in case prompting, and a skill is like just in time prompting. And so this was a kind of a revolution in context engineering because you could expose many more things to an LLM without overloading its context window.
That was extremely helpful for me personally because I've seen both MCPs and I've seen skills, and
there's so many. If you feel overwhelmed by all the jargon, like I do too. Like there's just so much.
It's kind of like in the Matrix when they plug the different things into Neo's head,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
What skill do you want? And you're going to have a whole freaking library of them.
Yeah.
It's very similar. So yeah, let me tell you more about what a skill is. So now skills are like, this is a foundational thing that OpenClaw is built on. An MCP was like, here's 50 different things you can do. You got to figure out how to use them though. You got to figure out when to use them. Like it was asking a lot of the LLM to kind of to figure out the user's intent and like when to do stuff. Skills are based on the insight. It's a mapping from a user intent to an action. When user wants X, you do this, right? So you only see that at the beginning of the system prompt. And when the user declares the intent, you go and look up the manual and figure out how to do that, right? And so what is the manual? The manual, this is a skill. A skill is kind of like an analog to an app right now. It's the closest thing to the old word. It's like an app, right? So a skill is a folder. So it's a very traditional thing, a folder. You've seen many folders on your computer with two types of content. One is text files containing prompts, meaning just plain English description of like, hey, when the user wants to book a flight, first you open the browser, then you log in and the user has to enter their password and you wait for that. And then go to kayak.com and then, and so it's a prompt, but it's not only a prompt, because sometimes if you give it an open-ended task like that, it won't be able to do that. But parts of this are better done by like a traditional programming technique, like a computer program. So that's the second thing that goes in the skill folder. You can have programs, right? So you could have a program that can specifically open kayak.com and can specifically find where to put the credit card information and can specifically do a bunch of the actual steps that are involved in booking a flight, can control Google Chrome browser, for example, and do all these things. And the prompt would say, hey, they prefer aisle seats to window seats, right? They'll have a bunch of preferences like that. It's like a compact manual that maps a user intent to an action, and it leverages prompting, which is the new type of computer, and a simple computer program, which is kind of like the old type. So to me, it's kind of like a marriage. It's a good marriage between these two. And that's why it's so powerful, is because it allows these LLMs to more effectively use a computer to accomplish what the user wants.
It's more efficient. It's faster. It's not bloated. Your context window probably won't fill up nearly.
It fills up once the user wants it to, but not before. Yeah. So it's much more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of like one thing here, is that we figured out a nice hierarchy for these types of things, right? So like in Claudebot, it saves a bunch of memories, but it doesn't look at the memories until they might be relevant, right? So it builds sort of like file system hierarchies to only expose what the user needs, but to allow it to be discoverable for other things they might need in the future, right? So that's been a big thing in context engineering. We've been adding hierarchy for all these things we used to just dump in there just in case, right? One more, and then it'll be OpenClaw. So vibe coding. What is vibe coding? So this has been a really big thing. We just had like the 1 year anniversary of this.
Happy birthday, vibe coding.
Happy birthday, vibe coding, yeah. So normally when you write computer programs, it's like a very, you have to have the blinders on. You have to really look, and if you get one semicolon, you're typing text into a file, doing really logical operations, and it's like very, very focused, kind of anal, thing. And so vibe coding is like the complete opposite, where you put your feet on the desk, and you're like, hey, computer, build me a movie player app that can download it from my Dropbox. And you just watch it do it, right? And so this became sort of possible a year ago, and it's become very effective in the last 3 months, like very effective.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And so let's just talk about like what is actually happening there. What happens is you say, hey, I want you to write a program to something like Claude Code or Replit, right? And then it might come back like a normal ChatGPT conversation, ask you some clarifying questions, try to clarify your intent a little bit. And then it will go into a loop, right? A loop just is a programming term that means just do something over and over again, right? And so we'll do a bunch of these tool calls. It will do a tool call to do web search, to search something you might have said. Then it will do one to read some files in the existing thing. Then it will write a file. Then it will edit a file. And at the end, once it thinks it's working, it will do a tool call to run the program. And then you can interact with it. And at the very end, and it might try to do some tool call to test it manually itself. So it's just doing a loop, doing these tools over and over again in skills and stuff like that until it judges, hey, I think I accomplished the thing. And then loops have a termination condition. You do it until it meets some condition. And in vibe coding and coding agents, that condition is a response from the LLM that doesn't have a tool call in it. So every one is just a bunch of these little things with a special marker to do something special. And at the end, it's just a text message, and that's just displayed to the user, and the loop exits. And if you're lucky, you have a working app that does exactly what you wanted. A year ago, you often didn't, but now you often do. And so
the agents are like, some of the agents update you along the way. They're like showing you, oh, we did this, cross that off, this off, and they can be quite transparent. Yeah. So it's exactly what he's saying there. You can see it's how it's working.
And you can steer it along the way. If it's going in the right direction, you say, I want blue, not purple, right? So you can control it a lot. And, this is something now, if you go on Replit, for example, you can have a pretty good time with zero technical understanding. And I encourage everyone to do it just as purely as an educational experience. It gives you a lens into that's what the future is going to look like.
Is Replit like co-work, like Claude's co-work?
Kind of. So Replit is a website that you can go to, and you can ask it to build an app, and it's very good at building an app. And it's also very good at hosting it on the web or like getting it onto your phone if it's a mobile app. So it's a 10-year-old company that was where they were dedicated to make it easy to learn to program. I actually used to do interviews on this platform like 10 years ago, and they were early to seeing this vibe coding trend because, hey, this solves the mission of the company. So it's like
So you're about to explain how OpenClaw works, right, Justin?
Yeah, OpenClaw.
I think this is a good time for me to like interject some of the social impact of what Justin has just described. And then I'll sort of end with something I just saw OpenClaw do, and then you can explain how that works, because I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think we're ready for this now. So, okay. So a lot of people, including me and Pablo, 5 years ago, if you had asked us about AI, zoom out, way outside of learning how it works, just impact on the world, we would have thought that it would be inherently repressive with regard to civil liberties and personal freedom. There was an old, I'll paraphrase Peter Thiel, about 7 or 8 years ago, he said something like Bitcoin is decentralizing, AI is centralizing. If you want to frame it ideologically, Bitcoin is libertarian and AI is communist. And, a lot of people, including me, really believed that. We thought it would be very pernicious towards human rights in the hands of states as they vacuum up everybody's information and build a more efficient surveillance and control machine. And a lot of that is true. Like, obviously, part of the program we've launched, the Human Rights Foundation, where we've brought Justin on to help us, is going to be exposing how dictators are using and abusing AI. But what we didn't see coming until, in the last 24 months was how could AI supercharge individuals asymmetrically in the same way that encryption or Bitcoin could certainly help dictators, but it helps individuals way more. I mean, dictators already control vast communication networks, banking systems, massive data centers. They already have ways to exploit money and spy on people and control armies and big companies. And they have huge numbers of talented people to do their bidding. But individuals and resistance groups and innovators don't. So vibe coding changes this, right? So now individuals have access to enormous cutting edge computing power and unbelievably intelligent personal assistants that are already saving them huge amounts of time and resources. I mean, just very simply, the fact that you can talk to a computer and make it do things for you is revolutionary. And this is increasing exponentially. So again, 1 year ago, vibe coding was invented. 9 months ago, a non-technical person could vibe code a website decently. I don't know if they could deploy it, maybe through Replit, but like a little shaky, but like they could do it. Today, a non-technical person can spin up an agent that can autonomously conduct work and perform tasks in the background without human oversight. And tomorrow, like, we don't know, right? So 6 months ago, a lot of elite developers, including a lot of the ones that Justin and I know, looked down upon vibe coding and they thought it was very ineffective and a bad work ethic, et cetera, et cetera. I did a retreat with some of these people, amazing elite developers in the beginning of December. And a bunch of them were like, nope, don't want that. But all of them have changed their minds as of today, right? It's really crazy. So Karpathy, the former head of AI at Tesla, who invented vibe coding more or less, said that in November, he was manually doing 80% of his code work and using vibe coding essentially for 20%. And as of a few weeks ago, that's switched to now he's vibe coding 80% and 20% manual. So, these agents are capable of massively automating a lot of human work, makes it possible to really super scale individuals and small organizations. So, where we started with the activists doing some basic trainings and workshops, that's now blossomed into like multi-day hackathons and bespoke trainings. And we can basically give people superpowers. The way I like to look at like what's available for the activists today, and this lines up pretty much with what Justin has said so far, and I'm getting close to finishing here, is you have your chat bot, just in terms of terminology. Okay, everybody knows they have their chat bot. They could go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. Then you have what I would call creator mode, which is like Claude Code. It can do a lot more than just spit text out, as Justin was describing. It can use tools, skills. Then you have a personal agent. So these are three kind of options that are out there now. We're about to explain how OpenClaw actually works, but the social impact of it is really important. Essentially, what I've seen with OpenClaw, so like yesterday, what we did is to a group of 20 people from different industries, Pablo and I did a 40-minute session where we did some background, and then we did some pretty amazing things with Claude Code. And then we used his own OpenClaw that he set up. And basically, like from my phone, I can go into Telegram and I can message his bot. And I just left it a 2-minute voice note with an incredibly complex task to do. And like 3 minutes later, it responded on my, like it gave me like this thing. And it was just like the most insane data rich website thing that was actually quite useful. I mean, to be very clear, we asked it to create a zoomable, scalable, manipulatable, circular, global, spherical map that shows exactly how much civil liberties and free speech and democracy funding every single country in the world gets, broken down by who gives it, and then like sorted so you could like rank them. And
Hold on, you sent this request over like
just
a phone line?
over Telegram. No, I just like from the phone. I was just like, yo, and I had it on speaker and other people were listening in the room. And I just said, I want you to do all these things. And then a couple minutes later, it gives us this like freaking incredible visual project. And what it's showing me is the following, and this is the kind of where I'll conclude, is that workflow for creators is going to change. So basically, the way it works up till this point is like, if you're an executive or you're a creative person, you have a meeting and you have a cool idea, you really want to do something. Well, what do? Well, you normally like talk to your executive assistant or your product team or your program team, depending on what kind of organization you work with. And you have a meeting and you describe what you want. And then they go talk to the creative team because they're not designers or, engineers. or they go talk to engineers, and then those people talk to web people, and then maybe they come back to you a few weeks later with some proposals. Hey, do you like this one better or this one? And there's just so much human time and effort there. Now, what you're gonna be able to do this year is like the creatives, like the founder person can literally describe exactly what they want. They could say, I want it to look like liquid glass on iPhone, or I want it to kind of look like this movie vibes, or they can literally, like, the dream can come out of the head so specifically, and then they can take, like, off of a voice note, they can speak it into existence, and then they take that and give it to the creative team. And then there's no more like, well, do you like this color or that? No. They have a really specific idea of the vision. So this is going to become, in my opinion, like a skill like surfing or like sculpting. And it's like, are you going to be decent at it, or are you going to be like Michelangelo? And we'll see. But I think it's going to be so amazing for creators, people who have big dreams and visions, because they can like really quickly get them to like a really good blueprint of what they want. And then their colleagues or alliances or teams can finish the rest. And that's I think one of the biggest social impacts of what Justin is describing. So maybe, Justin, now we turn to you and figure out how I can like talk to Telegram and have it do stuff, something like that.
Yeah, so transition from vibe coding to OpenClaw, or like, so it's like it started with like the ChatGPT interface, then it became kind of vibe coding agents, right? And now it's like the personal assistant, is we're just starting to enter that, where, we've had a good coding agent for about a year. We're just starting to get good personal assistants. And that's what OpenClaw is. It's kind of the first actually useful personal assistant. And so to transition though, I want to make a note that like I actually met Peter Steinberger, I think his name is, the guy who created it, from a blog post about how he vibe coded. And when I read it, was called Shipping at Inference Scale. And it like blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a complete amateur. What this guy's doing is unreal. And I think OpenClaw is largely a story of, he was like the world's best vibe coder, basically. This guy figured out how to vibe code, and that's actually what created OpenClaw. Like the real thing that unlocked it was that he was able to use vibe coding tools so effectively. So I'll get to that.
Bitcoin mining has a reputation for being complicated, risky, and hard to evaluate as a real investment. If you're considering mining in 2026, what actually matters isn't headline profitability. It's uptime, repairs, and whether the operation is run like a business. That's why I've been using Simple Mining. They're based in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and they run a white glove hosting operation where you own your own miners, choose your pool, and have Bitcoin sent directly to your wallet. They were featured on Inc.'s 5,000 list as the fastest growing company in Iowa, with over 40,000 machines under management. What stands out is execution. They have the #1 rated ASIC repair center, and for the first 12 months, repairs are included. If mining margins get tight, you can pause with no penalties, and if you want to resize or upgrade your fleet, there's a marketplace to resell equipment instead of being stuck. To help people think through whether mining actually makes sense right now, they put together a short resource called the 2026 Bitcoin Mining Blueprint. It walks through the 5 mistakes investors make when allocating to mining and how to avoid them before deploying capital. If it sounds interesting, you can get it for free at simplemining.io/Preston. That's simplemining.io/Preston.
But so what is the user experience, right? It's a personal assistant that you can chat with on any messenger you like: Signal, Telegram,
Nostr.
Like last night I did a live stream. We used, there's an existing Nostr thing that wasn't very good, and I built a new one using Marmot, right? So it's like you can add and do whatever the heck.
Email's a big one.
Email, anything you want. And if it doesn't exist, you can make it. So the ingestion, talking to this can be from anywhere. The agent has its own computer. It gets a computer and it totally controls it. It can be a desktop, like a little Mac Mini. It can be a virtual. It can be something in the cloud. It can be on your laptop, although don't probably do that in general. Be very careful with this. Do not try this unless you have information security skills. Like I'm still scared of it, and I'm like I'm a Bitcoin security expert almost. And then it can totally control that computer, right? So you can talk to it anywhere you want. It has its own computer, and it totally controls that computer. Basically, the premise is, what if you gave the agent its own computer and gave it skills and tools to control literally anything about that computer that the user wants to? And it got to a certain point now where the developers don't even have to invent the skill anymore. Now, if it's missing something, if there's some app you want it to be able to control that it can't do, you just say, hey, now it has recursive self-improvement now. You can be, okay, make a skill that allows me to pilot this weird app that nobody else uses, right? So it's basically vibe coding internally to make a personal assistant.
Or if you could color this in, it can also buy free market a skill. So Pablo was showing me that what he's building a, not competitor to OpenClaw, but like something like an alternative that's more for a different use case. But the idea is that when he wants stuff done, his agent can go hire via Nostr and Bitcoin, can hire like an expert in cashew, for example,
Yeah.
that Kale has like worked with so that it knows Kung Fu, right? So like he can hire that one and then, or hire one that's really good at designing liquid glass apps for iOS, for example. So he can go out and hire these and then like do it. So again, like the skills thing is not just something that you have locally. You could hire them or you could, acquire them or whatever you want. But the point is, it's fascinating to see this start to work.
Real fast, because we have a huge Bitcoin audience here.
Yeah.
When you look at how these AIs are going to want to transact with each other, for me, it's become super obvious that they're going to want Bitcoin because it's the only form of payment that they can't be rugged on. So if they're managing their own wallet and you look at all the different ways that they could be paid, anything that touches human rails or has the capacity for a human to be like, I think I'm going to liquidate this account that it's using. I think the AI is going to deeply understand that risk and never want to denominate their exchange.
I think for sure that's where we go. But it's just worth noting now that like, for example, I saw the founder of Umbrel today. He was just posting that like he had his OpenClaw on Umbrel, like just book his shit for him. And he like gave it his credit card. He gave it his credit card and his billing address. So it does work with fiat, but like, I think you're right that like over the coming years, it'll be way easier for these things to work with a digitally native currency. Yes, of course. Yes.
I almost think it's going to happen the opposite way, where it's like they'll just use dollars because that's what's in the training data and that's what everyone accepts by default, right? They'll use fiat,
right?
And then they'll try to do something where they can't, and they'll be like, "Dang it, I can't. Is there another option? Oh, I can just use this Bitcoin."
Oh, I get the Bitcoin skill.
It'll be more. I think it'll come more from trial and error, where it's like, dang, it's like they keep asking me for all this stuff, and I got to check emails, and then my owner has the email, and I can't get in there. So it's like, let me just create a Bitcoin wallet, right? I think it'll kind of happen that way from the ground up, just based on failure with the fiat.
Right. It's like I'm trying to hire this person in Nigeria and the credit card's not working. Well, why don't I try something else? Let me see. Oh, there's this Bitcoin skill. Oh, let me learn that really quickly. Oh, okay. It works now. Like it's going to do that.
So I talked about the user experience, right? It's a personal system that you can message however you want, that has its own computer. And that computer can be whatever you as the user want. You have the freedom to choose. And so it completely blew up in popularity. So to give a sense, GitHub is like the collaboration platform for software, open source software, right? There's something called a like or like a favorite on GitHub. You can like favorite a post or a project. You can say, I like this one, right? Star, it's called the GitHub star. Bitcoin has 80,000 GitHub stars. That's a really popular project. OpenClaw, and it's 15 years old. OpenClaw is like 6 weeks or 7 weeks old, and it has 160,000 stars. So it's double as popular as Bitcoin in like 6 or 7 weeks. Linux is like 200,000. So it's almost caught up to Linux, which is like the most famous open source project that exists. So that just gives you an indication of like how viral
the fastest moving.
They show, there's graphs where you can find where they show all these other like super fast moving projects that look like a hockey stick. And compared to those, OpenClaw is like a vertical line. It's just insane. Like there's no X dimension to the adoption.
Wow.
It's really cool. So that's to give you the listeners a sense of how popular it got. It's because the user experience was really good. Like this is what everyone's wanted. It's like a relatively self-sovereign personal assistant. So I just want to kind of ask some questions about like why did it happen now and give my takes on it. What enabled this? Like, and this is in the sense of like, where are we now? It's like the first thing you think is, oh, finally the AIs got smart enough. And I kind of disagree. Like I kind of think that if we had Claude Bot, like when Claude 4 came out, this is May 22 of last year, I kind of think it could have gone viral at the same time. It wouldn't have been able to do everything, but I think that some of the previous models from 6 or 9 months ago maybe could have done this. I'm not sure. I want to do some testing on it, but I don't actually think that when it comes down to running the assistant, we needed the models that we have today. So one big one was context engineering. We got a lot better at this just-in-time prompting instead of just-in-case prompting, and that's traditional software engineering. So this was human software engineering. But I think to me, the biggest one was that this one guy basically vibe coded a massive bridge. Like Peter Steinberger's GitHub is insane. The average developer does like maybe 10 GitHub contributions. That's like an action on GitHub a day. This guy does like 1,000 a day. He's just absolutely ripping it. He's operating at a much higher level than the rest of us. And many of us are trying to catch up. So he has like 50 projects on his GitHub that compose this bridge between a traditional computer and an agent. So stuff like managing a Google Calendar, managing Gmail, making tweets, communicating over Telegram, communicating over Apple Messenger. He made all these little command line tools, little basic tools that were optimized for an agentic user, not a human user. Like no human would want to use a CLI tool to manage their calendar. And so since LLMs are all text-based, right? It's all based on text. They are really good at making these little CLI tools. And so eventually it got to this kind of recursive improvement where the tool vibe codes itself. I mean, also it's like the labs couldn't do it because it was reckless. Like you needed like a cowboy, basically. You needed an open source cowboy who just didn't care. Like I don't know if this guy's a Bitcoiner, but he would fit right in.
Yeah.
Like Satoshi, like you needed someone who just open source this thing.
No big thing would ever do this. And also he's kind of a hero because he didn't, he's just like, no, I'm not, he could have raised all kinds of VC money and all these things. And he's like, no, I'm already successful. I'm just going to leave this for the people, right? So there's a lot of these technical things like making skills were missing abstraction, context engineering.
Amazing. And it puts so much pressure on the large corporations because the users are now going to want the choice of using whatever input they want. Whereas before they wanted to corral you in their thing. Like they wouldn't have wanted you to use Signal to talk to Anthropic's new product. They'd want you to use their app.
They'd invented messaging app.
Right. And now it's like, well, what are we going to do? Be gimped? They're going to have to they're probably going to have to offer ways for people to use any input they want. So this was pretty seismic. And I would also note that from a human rights perspective, maybe we can conclude a little bit of this part, Justin. Like, I'm not doomer on yes, of course, these things are risky and invasive, but like the cool part is you can hook up Signal and Maple and do OpenClaw like that. Like you can use privacy protecting AI agents and you can use privacy protecting messengers. And there are some serious innovations happening on that front now by some of our friends and people in our community who are making, what are going to essentially be full stack personal agents where maybe in 3 to 6 months, some of them are already like very alpha, but like you can experiment with them. But like you'll be able to go in your Signal and have it do stuff and have like the whole supply chain be encrypted. And I'm so bullish on that. So that's what HRF's really going to be focusing on this year from a investment point of view, like supporting the infrastructure is going to be building those tools. And then the rest of what we're doing is going to be just the super scaling and education.
Yeah. Let's like go into those in a little more detail. I just want to kind of summarize first.
So, go ahead.
So if you like think of OpenClaw as like a story, and it is a story, that's why it went so viral. Like the story is just as much as the tool, I think, in a sense. It's like the story of like what one individual can do with the help of vibe coding, like with AI development, right? One guy, it was basically, and then eventually he got far enough where a big voluntary open source community arose around it. And this is exactly what we Bitcoiners participate in. This is what Nostr is. And so it's very inspiring to see what one person can do. And to me, OpenClaw is more of like an idea than an actual product. To me, it shows us the idea of what if an agent has its own computer and you can talk to it however you want. I'm going to build my own OpenClaw. I'm not going to use OpenClaw. I'm just going to vibe code my own, and I'm going to use some of the pieces they have. And all my friends are going to do the same thing. And you're going to see this big renaissance of stuff that can't be controlled, that is customized to what the user wants. And so for my takeaway, it's like I want to teach more people about AI, and also that this is why I'm proud to work on the HRF, like AI for Individual Rights program. Like we're fighting to make sure that more of this type of stuff can happen, that AI remains user controlled, and that people can thrive in an AI world. So I transition out to Alex just here a little more about, maybe or share a little more about how the program started and what we've done and what we want to do.
Well, yeah, again, just the moment we was fortunate about 13 months ago when we were presented with the opportunity to do this by a generous supporter. And anyone listening, you can just do things. You can support people like us and have us do really cool things. So thank you to everybody who supported us, including you, Preston, for helping us today. Just even having this conversation is going to spark a lot of thoughts, I think. But yeah, created the world's first AI for individual rights program. Every other human rights group either hates AI or they're going to try to really focus on research. And it's just, they're not going to do anything. And you know what? Like we wanted to do it differently. And most of our effort is going to be focused on how to make this tool a mechanism for personal liberation, period. We are going to do, again, some research and investigations into how dictators are abusing it. That's very important. We do feel like that will start to get crowded with other people. What I don't see anyone else doing for sure is like, in the same way that we've been pioneers with educating dissidents and activists and resistance groups on Bitcoin, well, we're going to do the same thing with these open source privacy protecting AI tools, because in the same way that Bitcoin helps them become unstoppable, AI is going to help them 10x or 100x what they can do. And we need that right now. Like right now is the moment for us to push freedom forward. So that's what the program's designed around. We're going to do events that bring people together, as Justin was describing, like bringing together talented developers with activists. I mean, both of them were thrilled. I mean, the event went so well. The first one, we're going to do 2 more this year, at least. We're doing one in Nashville at Bitcoin Park in May, talk to Rod. We're going to do one at PubKey in DC in September. So we're going to cook with these. And the developers were like thrilled because it's like something so inspiring to work on as opposed to just like the standard hackathon. And the activists are like, this is awesome. I get like 5 of the smartest people in the world to like help me do what I want to do. So like everybody's psyched, you know?
Let me chime in here a little bit. So like we had this idea, you know, so HRF, one thing, I mean, my friends still every once in a while give me crap about like, how do you work for an NGO? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Alex,
It's true. We are non-governmental.
I'm like the last person you would expect to be here. And my friends always joke with me about this. And I'm like, well, Alex brought me and my friends who are these freedom tech developers, very ideological freedom tech developers. And we met these physical freedom fighters who actually fight for freedom in authoritarian regimes. And over the years, I would meet these people and they were like some of the most courageous, inspiring people I've ever met. And I was just like, man, I wish I could help them. But it was always a little distant because it's like, I'd be like, okay, use my wallet, you know, I can teach you how to use Bitcoin, right? So it remained kind of a friendship, a social thing. But then when vibe coding happened, like what vibe coding means is the cost of software production is going kind of to zero. That's what it means, right? So you have, a year ago, you needed to be ChatGPT to build an agent. Then Peter Steinberger could build one himself and Pablo. And now the tools themselves can recursively self-improve, right? The cost is going down, 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 and down. So the opportunity is like, okay, what if we could put activists and developers together and have them actually try to solve problems, right? So the problems with hackathons traditionally is that usually the ideas are bad and there's no distribution of the product at the end. But the activist collaboration fixes both of these. The activists bring a real problem, like, hey, how do we make a leaderboard of which LLMs respect human rights? And then how do we distribute it? Okay, the guy's got a massive academic following and is very respected and works at Harvard. So it's like, you know, like this is what all the projects were like, right? So it was very empowering from the activist point of view because they got to do something useful and they also got to see how software is created, right? So a lot of these people have been around HRF, talked to these developers, but I don't think they actually understood like where it comes from. And they got to see for a day where it comes from. And from the developer point of view, it was very empowering because like, man, we've been working on these abstract problems all the time. And now I get to make a tool that can help find corruption in a big data dump of documents from Russia. It's very nice to work on like a concrete problem and then apply the skills you knew previously from your work in Freedom Tech. So it was a big success. It was a surprising success for me. And I'm really looking forward to doing more of these.
You know, just TLDR, what are we doing? I mean, 2 main things. We're going to be bringing people together at all kinds of interesting events. We'll have a big Freedom Tech Day at the Oslo Freedom Forum where we're going to have quite a bit of vibe coding for activism. And then the second thing will be grants. I mean, you know, we want both the activists to apply to our AI fund to seek help to build the things they need. And then we also want really talented developers working on, you know, things like open code or OpenClaw or Maple, like open source sovereignty and or privacy improving infrastructure. We want to aggressively support that. So people should get in touch with us. You know, we really, really want to beef that up. And even small investments can go a really long way right now because of how powerful the virality is here. Like, again, like the guy from OpenClaw, when he released it, when it was Claudebot, it's not like he had raised $30 million of venture capital, that did it out of his house. And it's like, we can do that. Like, I don't know if you want to mention, like briefly, just what like Kale came out with today or yesterday, but like the Claude AI thing, like our friends are coming up with amazing stuff.
Kale, another pretty famous Bitcoiner who has just done incredible things historically as far as writing code. He made a turnkey Clawbot that he just released a website, right? That makes all of it super easy. A person can just go to the website that he just stood up. And I can only imagine how quickly a guy that's as talented as he is in writing software was able to engineer something like this. And
and it's got a ways to go on the security side, but like, you know, he knows that he's a privacy maximalist and he's going to work on that. But again, where we are today is like, for the activists at least, is we want people to use something like Maple for their basics, for what their 101s are. Like, you should just not be using other chatbots. It'll get 95 cents on the dollar at least of the big corporate model, then you could be encrypted. Like, let's move there. Let's move from text message to signal. And then in the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to be able to move your creator mode, you know, your Claude code type things. And I think we're going to be able to move your agent as well into a similar environment. So that's like the hope and the dream right now, is that now, like in the next 3 to 6 months, people who really value privacy and sovereignty, you know, will have access to extremely powerful tools that reflect their values, but that can also 10x to 100x their work. And that's very exciting.
Guys, we have to keep this conversation going. Like, honestly, like, you guys are on the tip of the spear. It's a military term. You're on the tip of the spear of.
That means a lot coming from you. Thank you, Preston.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
In the conversation I had with Pablo and Trey, I was like, guys, you got to come back and keep us updated, because I honestly think that this Clawbot thing, and it's interesting because Sam Altman literally said the same thing. And, you know, coming from a guy that's, well, you know, one of the biggest in the AI space.
No, he said it's here to stay.
It's here to stay.
Yeah,
That caught
it's
my
amazing.
attention. And I think that this is something that is going to be massive for individuals. It's the wild, wild west right now. And for all intents and purposes, from a privacy, security, people losing their bank accounts and email addresses and things like that, I think it's the wild, wild west right now.
Yeah.
But in a year from now, I can only imagine what this is.
I mean, it's a new era of personal computing, you know, per Justin's commentary. Like, the creator of OpenClaw really just tore a new hole in what's possible. And now we're moving into that world.
Let me give one analogy. Like, personal agents at this stage really remind me of eCash, right? Which I worked on through Pediment, and which Callie worked on through Cashew. Because it's like, there's an obvious trade-off, big security trade-off right up front. It's like, hey, you trust another guy, random guy with your bank, right? And so it's like kind of crazy. You know, you give an AI agent its own computer and let it do whatever the heck it wants. So it's like a big upfront trade-off that's a little reckless. But then you get this flowering of all kinds of hobbyists and people who are kind of understand the risk, understand the trade-offs. That's what we're trying to communicate. Don't just recklessly do this if you don't understand what's kind of going on. That's why I tried to explain so much of these ideas to you, because you need to equip yourself with some of these basic things in order to make these decisions. But when you have this flowering of a big group of very motivated people in like the open source ecosystem, that's when you can have really magical things happen. And that's what happened with Cash and Cashew. And that's what's happening with these personal self-sovereign AI agents.
You know, you have all these people talking like AI's coming, it's going to take all of our jobs. The other side of the coin that I think I really want to, you know, impress on a person listening to this, the tools we're talking about also give a person the ability to 100x or 1000x their capacity and their ability to do things. And so these two forces really come down to, what is your perspective? Is your perspective, this is too hard and complicated? Well, AI is probably going to eat your lunch. Or are you sitting there saying, hey, this is my moment at a...
like, what can you do with this? Like, think about this, like, it'd be a great example. I'm here with a really well-known Cuban activist. I'm thinking to myself, like, right now, there's no like Bitcoin wallet or app that like really is perfect for her needs. And, you know, no one's really going to build that. She's going to build it. Like, within the next year, she'll be able to speak to a computer, and it'll open source. It'll take some stuff from BitChat, which is very important given that Cuba doesn't have great internet. It'll take some stuff from like some very popular open source Lightning libraries. It'll just build what she needs, and it'll look awesome, and it'll be exactly what she needs. And she could just do it in a few weeks or a few days or a few hours, depending on how much she wants to put into it. I mean, we're going to see the blossoming of so many interesting little personalized tools that can radically expand people's potential. And it's just such an exciting moment to your original point, Preston. And we'll come back, and, you know, we're making a mini documentary right now about the 6 months that we're living on, that we're going to play on the main stage of the Oslo Freedom Forum. It's going to start January 1. It's going to end June 1. We're going to play it on June 2. And at the bottom third, you're just going to see the days go by, and you're going to see like the headlines, and you're going to see interviews and work. And it's going to be so crazy what happens on June 2 when we show this thing. The speed is just face melting at what is going on here. So honor and a pleasure as always.
Hey, that event, and also the one in Nashville in May, I am very interested in going.
Let's go.
Yeah. So we'll put links to that in the show notes.
May 8 to 10 for the Bitcoin Park Hackathon Part 2. AI Hack for Freedom. And then it's June 1 to 3 for the Oslo Freedom Forum in Norway. OsloFreedomForum.com. Check it out.
Amazing. I have one thing to plug here at the end. So I started doing some live streaming on Nostr to try to share what I've learned over the last year. And so next week, I'm going to try to vibe code a Bitcoin full node. That's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to be live streaming on Nostr all week, and probably going to injure myself severely in this process, but you know, wish me luck.
Good luck.
It's amazing. Okay. So we end the shows now with a song. And we need you guys to select, either one of you, what your favorite artist is or song. Like, if there's a specific song you like, I want it to be like that. And then the song is going to recap everything we just talked about in a fun song-like way. So do either of you have a very strong preference for a specific song, artist, genre? Go ahead and speak up.
Dustin, you fire.
I can't think of a specific song, but I would go with the sea shanty song style would be fun.
Okay, great.
Shanty songs. I don't even know what that is, but
It's like the sailors. I could send you one afterwards. I just don't know how to find it.
Okay, yeah.
Like the sailors sing about how they're getting back to shore and they're going to get into trouble and, that sort of thing.
It's great.
Wow. I love how diverse these song selections are. The last one, I think, was a Beatles song or something like that. So, all right. Guys, thank you so much for making time. We're going to have links to all of that in the show notes. Enjoy your sea shanty song on the closeout here.
Pull a rope and hold her steady. Through the fog we sail when ready. OpenClaw, open sea. They can't hold what they can't see.
Yeah. Okay. Flip the ship, now we dip, sliding on the base. Vibe the code, double time, never leaving any trace. Sovereign, running on my own. Pie on the counter, AI picking up the phone. Build it in the night, yeah, the coffee wasn't cold. 160,000 stars, that's a story being told. But I don't slow down. Nah, I keep it moving, keep it spinning, keep the sound bouncing off the walls and the ceiling and the floor. Open source the recipe, then I'm cooking up some more. Feel it in your chest when the bass line drop. Once we start this wave, we don't ever stop. Open sea. They can't hold what they can't see. Open sea. This the code that set us free. This the code that set us free. One more time. This the code that set us free. Okay, let me break it down slow. One developer changed the whole flow, then we speed it back up like we never hit the brakes. Signal buzzing, telegram humming, making sovereign stakes. Activists and hackers, builders and the dreamers. Everybody vibing, none of us are sleepers. Fast now, catch it if you can. Code is in my left hand, future's in my right hand. Sliding like the bass do, popping like the snare do. Building what they said that we would never dare do. Calendar handled, emails flowing, data growing. Where we heading next, baby, we already going. Feel it in your chest when the bass line drop. Once we start this wave, we don't ever stop. OpenClaw, open sea. They can't hold what they can't see. OpenClaw, open sea. This the code that set us free. This the code that set us free. Let's go. This the code that set us free. Used to think the future wasn't ours. Now we hold the key to sovereign hours. Yeah, let this sit. Now we build it, now we share it. Got a whole new world and we declawing. OpenClaw, yeah, we calling. Open sea, never stalling. OpenClaw, walls are falling. Open sea, new day dawning, old day dawn. OpenClaw, open sea. They can't hold what they can't see. OpenClaw, open sea. This the code that set us free. 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 The sea is ours now.
Thanks for listening to TIP. Visit theinvestorspodcast.com for show notes and educational resources. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not provide financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. The content is impersonal and does not consider your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Listeners should do their own research and consult a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. Nothing on this show is a recommendation or solicitation to buy or sell any security or other financial product. Hosts, guests, and the Investors Podcast Network may hold positions in securities discussed and may change those positions at any time without notice. References to any third-party products, services, or advertisers do not constitute endorsements, and the Investors Podcast Network is not responsible for any claims made by them. Copyright by the Investors Podcast Network. All rights reserved.
What Claudebot is, or what Maltbot is kind of like this all-powerful personal assistant that you can set up here. But the implications go way beyond that. I'm thinking about like you can run a team of robots and they all have their specialized tools that they can work with, models that are designed for specific purposes. And your chief of staff, your main guy there, he can coordinate all of those different robots to build stuff without you really even interacting here.